A thick 18-inch blade sits on the workbench, half cleaver, half sword. But this medieval-looking tool isn't what you think it is. That beveled edge, sharpened countless times, tells a story most people never discover. But here's what makes it strange. The handle isn't in line with the blade like an axe. Instead, it juts out at a right angle, meant to be gripped with both hands and pulled toward your body. The wooden handle shows the dark patina of 100 years of sweat and wood oils. There's a gentle curve to that blade, worn smooth from use. And if you look closely, you can still see the forge marks from when it was hand-hammered. Take a good look. Do you know what this was for? Most people have no idea. But 150 years ago, every settlement from Maine to Missouri had at least one man who couldn't do his work without it. That tool is called a froe, and it was the splitting tool that built early America. Before sawmills dotted every county, when a farmer needed shingles for his roof or clapboards for his walls, he turned to the froe. You'd take a straight-grained log, usually cedar or oak, stand it upright, and position that blade along the grain. A sharp blow with a wooden mallet would sink it in. Then you'd pull back on that perpendicular handle, using leverage to pry and split the wood along its natural grain lines. The motion was part chop, part pry, and in skilled hands a froe could produce hundreds of perfect shingles in a day, each one split smooth and true. The froe disappeared when steam-powered sawmills made it cheaper to saw shingles than to split them by hand, and when asphalt shingles replaced wood altogether in the early 20th century. The last generation that knew the particular rhythm of froe work is long gone now. Walk a little further into that same workshop and you'd find another blade, this one with handles at both ends. The draw knife looks simple enough, a long straight blade about 10 inches across with a wooden grip rising up from each end, turned perpendicular so you can pull it toward your chest. But simplicity shouldn't be confused with crudeness. A good draw knife in the right hands could shape wood faster and more accurately than most modern tools. The cooper used it to shave barrel staves to exact thickness. The wheelwright used it to shape spokes. The chairmaker used it to round legs and carve seats. You'd secure your workpiece on a shaving horse, a kind of foot-powered vise. Then pull that blade toward you in long, controlled strokes, peeling away curls of wood with each pass. The satisfying part was feeling the blade follow the grain, seeing the shape emerge from rough lumber through nothing but muscle memory and a sharp edge. Power planers and belt sanders ended the draw knife's reign in professional shops, though you'll still find them at craft fairs where old-timers demonstrate the old ways. That wheelwright who used the draw knife had another specialized tool hanging nearby, one that most people today wouldn't even recognize as a tool at all. The spoke pointer looks like a hollow metal cone with a blade hidden inside. After a wagon spoke was roughly shaped, it needed a tapered tenon on the end to fit snugly into the wheel hub. The wheelwright would slide this cone over the end of the spoke and twist, and the blade inside would shave the wood into a perfect taper, the same every time. It was a kind of manual pencil sharpener for wood, sized specifically for wheel making. Each wheelwright might have 3 or 4 of these in different sizes, each corresponding to different wagon types. When automobiles replaced horse-drawn wagons in the 1920s and 30s, the spoke pointer became instantly obsolete. The trade didn't just decline, it vanished almost completely within a single generation. Over in the corner of that same era workshop, near where the barrels were stored, you'd find a tool that looks downright medieval in its simplicity. The bung extractor served one very specific purpose, removing the wooden bung, or plug, from the hole in a barrel without damaging either the bung or the barrel. It's essentially a threaded screw on a handle, often with a sideways pull bar, like a compact version of a corkscrew. You'd thread it into the wooden plug, then lever it out. In an age when everything from pickles to gunpowder came in wooden barrels, and those barrels were valuable enough to reuse many times, the bung extractor was an essential tool in warehouses, general stores, and ships. Once cardboard boxes and steel drums replaced wooden cooperage in the mid-20th century, the bung extractor joined the froe and spoke pointer in the dustbin of obsolete trades. Did your grandfather have one of these in his shed? Tell me below. If you head out from the workshop to the barn, you'd find another forgotten implement hanging on the wall near the wagon. The wagon wrench doesn't look like much, just a flat piece of forged iron about 15 inches long with different sized holes and slots cut through it. But this humble tool was the adjustable wrench of its day. Those holes fit over the various nuts and bolts of a wagon. The sizes carefully chosen to match the standard hardware of the era. One end might have a slot for tightening the reach, the iron bar connecting front and rear axles. Another hole would fit the wheel nuts. Some had a hooked end for pulling cotter pins. A farmer heading out for a long journey would tie his wagon wrench under the seat, knowing it held every size he'd need for roadside repairs. When standardized cars with specialized tool kits replaced wagons, the multi-purpose wagon wrench was forgotten. Back in the cooperage, the barrel maker had an entire arsenal of specialized implements. Among the strangest looking was the hoop driver, a tool for forcing the metal hoops down tight around a barrel. Picture a flat metal cone, almost like a funnel that's been cut in half lengthwise, attached to a wooden handle. The cooper would place the wide end over a barrel hoop and strike the tool with a mallet, driving the hoop downward evenly without denting or damaging it. The tapered shape distributed the force and kept the hoop round. It was a clever solution to a specific problem, and like so many cooperage tools, it became a relic when barrels themselves became relics. The same cooper used something called a race knife for cutting the groove, called a croze or race, near the top and bottom inside edge of a barrel where the headboards would fit. This specialized curved blade, guided along the inside of the assembled staves, would carve a precise channel in a single smooth pass around the barrel's circumference. The curve of the blade matched the curve of the barrel, and the depth was controlled by a fence or guide. It took years to learn the touch, the exact angle, and pressure. There's no call for race knives anymore, not when the few barrels still made for bourbon and wine are produced in specialized factories with machinery. In the leatherworker's shop down the road, you'd find the marking awl, which looks like a simple scratch awl but with a different purpose. Unlike a regular awl meant to punch holes, the marking awl had a blunt, polished point used to score lines on leather without cutting through. A saddle maker or shoe maker would use it with a straight edge to mark cutting lines, stitching guides, and fold lines. The scored line would compress the leather fibers just enough to create a visible guide that wouldn't damage the material. When mass production moved shoe and saddle making into factories with stamping machines and printed patterns, the careful hand marking of each piece became unnecessary. Up on the roof, the carpenter carried a tool that combined two functions in one clever design. The shingling hatchet had an axe blade for trimming shingles to size, but turn it over and you'd find a row of notches along the top edge and a small nail-pulling claw. Those notches were gauges for consistent shingle exposure, and the flat pole opposite the blade could drive nails. Some versions had a pin that would hold a nail for one-handed starting. A roofer could trim, measure, and nail with one tool, never setting it down. When pre-cut shingles and later asphalt shingles became standard, and when nail guns replaced hammers, the shingling hatchet lost its place in the tool belt. The final tool in our collection today would dwarf most of the others. The slick chisel looks like a regular chisel that's been stretched to absurd proportions. The blade might be 3 or 4 inches wide and 2 feet long, with a large two-handed handle. And here's the key detail. There's no provision for striking it with a mallet. The slick was a paring tool, used by shipbuilders and timber framers to smooth large surfaces with muscle power alone. A skilled carpenter would grip that long handle and push the razor-sharp blade across a beam, taking gossamer-thin shavings, truing up a surface, or fitting a joint. The long blade and two-handed grip provided control and power that a mallet-struck chisel never could for finishing work on large timbers. Power planers rendered the slick obsolete, along with the massive timber frame construction techniques that required it. These tools didn't just disappear because better technology came along. They vanished because entire ways of working, entire trades, entire rhythms of daily life changed. The man who could split 200 shingles with a froe before lunch, who knew by touch when a barrel hoop was seated just right, who could true a ship timber with a slick, that man possessed knowledge that can't quite be recovered from books or videos. It lived in the hands, in the memory of muscles, in the 1,000 small adjustments you made without thinking. We have better tools now, faster and more precise. But we've lost something too. Something about the direct relationship between a craftsman and his material, mediated by a simple tool he might have made himself or inherited from the man who trained him. Drop your guess in the comments and subscribe for a new forgotten tool every day. There is always one more story in the toolbox.